Morning everyone. My name is Sharon Lashley. I am the owner and MD of Enviro UK Consultants and also a community interest company called Climate Action North. Principally and first, I am an actual environmentalist of over 25 years, and I studied environmental management on a level 4 NVQ. So I actually did my training on the job. I was actually working in the industry at the time, looking after things called ISO 14001, which are proper management systems that companies have to put in place to manage their impact on the environment. So I'm trained in climate change, trained in waste management. I have my own company, Enviro UK Consultants, since 2013, and I am also what's known as a social entrepreneur. So I'm set up to take action on climate change through our community interest company, and that was formed in 2017. So first off, very quickly, I was born in 1965, and ever since I was young, I've always spent time outside in nature, exploring nature, and, you know, exploring the local rivers and streams, and always getting into trouble, being outside, you know, doing all the things that we should really do when we're playing outside. And I spent a lot of time on the beaches as well, checking out rock pools and looking for starfish and jellyfish and stuff like that. And so really, I'd always been interested in the outdoor world and the environment. So obviously that it's stuck with me all these years as a person growing up and, you know, going to school, going to college, and then learning to be an environmentalist. So an environmentalist is technically a person who is concerned with and campaigns for, or is an advocate for, the protection of the environment. So anyone can really say that they are an environmentalist, and they are sometimes referred to, you know, using derogatory terms such as greenies or tree huggers. I'm proud to be all of those, to be honest. That's what I am. I'm proud to be, you know, put in that bracket. But I'm also a professional businesswoman, and that's what I've done for the last 25, nearly 30 years. So I've always been interested in the environment. I've always loved the natural world, always been fascinated by the sea, but always been worried about climate change. Always worry about plastic in the ocean and worry about the insects and wildlife. And that's a lot of worrying. I do a lot of worrying, and I do suffer quite a lot sometimes with a bit of eco-anxiety, as it's known. So how do I combat that, and what do I do in construction, you know, to make sort of life a little bit easier for myself? The thing that really spurred me on to do something was this quote from Robert Swan, who is actually a local, he's a regional adventurer and explorer. Said the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. Now that's a very big statement, and that's what I normally come across in my day-to-day job, talking to people who don't quite get the message about climate change. Like, oh, someone else will do that, that's fine. But it isn't. It's about us all taking individual action to do something. So talking about how can construction save the world, my background is, as I say, I worked in industry for a lot of years. I worked for local authorities, local councils. I worked for the third sector, the charity sector, and then I worked for industry. And I started my real journey on environmentalism in industry, working in a plastic packaging company. And that gave me the inspiration to say, you know, I can't really see a way forward other than to get out into the real environmental world. So I set up my own company in 2013. Prior to that, I had worked for a solar panel company. So I trained in renewable energy because I could see that there was a future for renewable energy. So I trained as a renewable energy consultant, and also that then gave me the basis to be able to say, I can do this, I can be a consultant, and I can go out and make a difference. So I describe my career as wearing many hats. I do wear many hats, and one of them is, interestingly enough, a construction-based hat. So yes, I wear many hats. So in my years of working in construction, usually as a renewable energy consultant, you know, being called in to look at solar panels, how they've been installed, what is the technology behind that, how can that make life easier. So one of the hats I wear is a construction hat, and this is one of my major projects that I started when I first set up my business in 2013. It was to take down or decommission a really large wind turbine, you know, and that was actually on the Business Innovation Centre in Sunderland, where I work. So it was to manage the dismantling of that big turbine and put up in its place a really large solar photovoltaic tracker, which tracks the sun from the east to west. So it's in a windy position on the River Wear in Sunderland. And like all projects, I'm sure all construction people will agree, we did it in the winter, you know, and it was freezing cold and it was snowing, and that was what happened. You know, it was a very, very challenging project, but we had to get the project done. So that's what we did. So that was one of my major projects at the start of my real journey in saving the planet. And I actually worked with quite a lot of companies as well in terms of working with architects, and architects would come to me and say, look, we've got this development of houses and we would like to put some solar panels on or put some extra alternative form of heating. So that's when I work with architects at the front end of the project to make sure that architects and developers are trying to save the planet at the first stage. Like the first stage, it has to be done at the design stage. So if you get to a stage where you're halfway through the project or the end of the project and you're just putting solar panels or extra measures in place to make it easier, it's really best to do it at the start. And that's where I got involved with quite a few people that I was working with, in architects and developers would ask me for advice. And I should add as well that I am a trained solar panel installer. I did go up on the roof and I did install with the guys on the roof. I had to know the technology. It's no point in me being a project manager if I didn't know what I was project managing. So I had to learn about the installation process for solar panels. And I also went across to Belgium to learn about air source heat pumps, which are like great big fridges in reverse. And they take the air from outside and they change it into heat. So in Scandinavian countries, we have various different heating systems, of which include air source. So that was really why I trained up to be a professional consultant in renewables, so that I could confidently give advice on, projects that we're putting in renewable energy in place. So that's my construction hat, which I still do a lot of that work, and I still work with a lot of building companies and developers and housing associations. But I took more of an extra step in encouraging them to build with nature in mind. So building with nature in mind, you can probably gather I'm surrounded by books, and so I read a lot about nature. I'm an absolute nature fan. I completely think that, we are all part of nature. We are all part of one big ecosystem. If we don't look after nature, no one else will, and we will have a serious breakdown in society. So that was how building with nature has to become part of our key focus when we are building and carrying out construction projects. So in 2013, I set up my own company. I went solo. I completely took a big risk. I had no money. I left my fully paid job with hardly any money, but I just went out and, basically advertised the fact that I was a consultant, and then I got work coming in, which was great because that helped me then develop my career as a renewable energy and an environmentalist, renewable energy consultant. So other hats that I wear now, since 2017, I needed to give something back. So I could see that my work in construction was beneficial to actually making a real proper difference in terms of the technologies that we were putting in to save energy and create energy and, make everything a bit more sustainable. I wanted to then go one step further and give something back to the communities that I worked in. So I became a social entrepreneur and set up my company, Climate Action North, which, as you can gather from the title, it's about taking climate action. We're in the north at the moment, but it's about taking action on climate change. And that's what we really, really do all day, every day. It never stops. So alongside my day job, I have this job. So other hats I'm starting to wear, have been wearing is, I run beach cleans for Climate Action North. This picture shows the whole cross-section of staff from the local Asda store. We dragged them all down to the beach and made them pick a load of litter, and that was great. They really enjoyed it. And then I volunteered running litter picks and beach cleans with local radio stations, for example, Sun FM. So it's all about giving something back. And in terms of my role in construction, that still sits side by side and works really well with the new company. But working with the new company, I work with some great people. I really do. There are lots of really, really good people wanting to do lots of really good work for the planet and to help save the planet. So we do litter picks. We work with schools on, running beach clean, educating the children about the benefits of keeping the beaches clean and why plastic on the beaches is a problem. And they then learn to become the next generation climate engineers, we call them. We have a project running with Climate Action North with our STEM director. We have 2 directors in addition to myself, which is Jennifer Claire Upton, who looks after the marketing and PR and the climate content that we write. And then we have Julie Harrison, who's our STEM director, and she deals with STEM education and linking that back to climate change and how we can link with engineers. We work with civil engineers in the northeast here as well. And so we link everything together to sort of how can we encourage the next generation of climate engineers and climate scientists, and that's what we do. Again, working with amazing people. Emily, my marine biologist, we work with Emily to give us a lot of information about what we're doing on the beaches, how that all impacts on what we do. And, things called nurdles, which I won't go into too many details about nurdles, but we can talk about that if we need to at some point later on in the whole sessions of speakers that we have today. Sasha is a friend of mine. She's the human swan. Again, going back to nature, but using conservation as well, because Sasha was a lady who just decided to follow the Buick swans in a paramotor hanging from what we call a great big handkerchief across the Arctic tundra. She did that to learn about what the impact of climate change was on nature and on migratory species. So it was really important for Sasha to fly that journey so that she could see what was going wrong with the climate today and how that could relate back to what we needed to do to take action. Again, wearing many hats. I'm a really big fan of hedgehogs. I love hedgehogs. I'm sure everyone loves hedgehogs. The lady on the left is the lady who's speaking actually later today. It's Tama Carell. She's a really good friend of mine, a fellow environmentalist here in the north, and also a really big advocate for hedgehogs in the northeast. She actually looks after them. So you'll hear from Tama later. One of the many hats I wear, obviously working for nature, was that I approached the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust in Washington about getting some solar panels on the flamingo house. Very bizarre project, but it was a really good project because it was different. And this is what I can do working for myself. I've got full power to go and talk to people and say, how can we help you? And how can we construct something that might be a little bit different? So we did, we applied for funding, we won the funding, and we managed to get the solar panels put onto the roof of the flamingo house, which you can actually go and visit only just now because they're starting to lift the lockdown measures. But the reason we did this was to provide the flamingos with some ventilation and also UV lighting, because that's what flamingos need in order to kickstart the breeding process. And we did this last year. We put the panels on the roof. The technology worked amazingly well. The flamingos were very happy. And hey ho, we had baby flamingos. We had baby flamingos last May, June, and they are so cute. I mean, who doesn't love a baby flamingo? They are lovely. So it worked. It was a project that worked, but I consider that one of my coolest projects that I've ever done because it was so wonderful to see the actual result of that and see that baby flamingo. And we had at least half a dozen, 6 or 7 that were born. Fantastic. Again, I work with other projects as well. Again, as part of my role, I can work with I work with Sasha as a volunteer on the Flight with the Osprey project, and Grace with the International Otter Survival Fund. Again, all linked with nature and climate change. It's about what impact, what are we doing in the world today that has an impact or makes a difference to these species, being able to survive in the wild. Meet lots of great people. We've met Chris Packham. We brought Chris Packham up to the Northeast 2 years ago to speak to 120 businesses, of which some were the construction sector, about something called rewilding. And rewilding is a really important term as well for building back and giving something back to the world and actually making a difference to climate change as well, because we all love trees. I love trees. Trees play a really important part in construction, as well as being able to take up all the carbon dioxide. We also plant a lot of things. We plant a lot of trees, we plant a lot of flowers, and we plant a lot of, you know, biodiversity for businesses. So we work with businesses in the north to encourage them to rewild part of their business park. So if we've got a business park that's all concrete and it might have a little bit of grass, and all they do is mow the grass and mow the grass, what we do is we ask them if they'll stop mowing the grass, let the natural flowers come back, but then we'll also plant up some extra flowers and wildflowers to help bees and pollinators and butterflies. We're working very well with businesses in the northeast, and that's been taken up really well. And my next quest is to talk to developers, because developers should be, again, building with nature, building in what we call biodiversity into their construction projects. You know, if we don't have grass, for example, on projects, if we don't have anywhere for water to go, rainwater has to go somewhere. We know that trees take up a lot of water, and we know they take up a lot of carbon dioxide. We need more trees, we need more shrubbery, we need more greenery, we need more green spaces in development. And that's how we can literally save the planet, if we do that. Obviously, we're fans of Greta. Everyone loves Greta Thunberg. She's an amazing, amazing person. But like Greta says, everyone can love what she does, but if you don't take action, it means nothing. So we have to take action, which is why we set up our organisation. We have physically striked. We've been on strike with the kids in Durham. You know, our local patch is Durham. That's me on the top right, not looking particularly happy, but my friend on the left looking very happy. But we work together, both active environmentalists. I should mention, though, that Climate Action North isn't an activist group. We're not. We're campaigners for a better world. So we will campaign for lots of things. We will strike when we need to, but we'll then get on with taking action. That's what we do. We have to take action, because anything else just takes our focus away from saving the planet. So really, getting on to how do you think construction can and will save the world? We believe if we work with it, we can save the world, but we think we must have more environmentalists in the world. We must have more people to help us. We can all do our part, play our part, I suppose, but we think that having more environmentalists, obviously I need more environmentalists in the world. We will help the world save energy. We can help businesses be more green. We can help install solar panels and renewable energy. That's what we do. We can help nature and biodiversity, and we can help reduce waste and single-use plastic. So if we put all of those things together, being an environmentalist, like what I do, I think it's really important that we take action, but we also take responsibility, because, you know, taking responsibility for your own part and the part that you play in this world and on the planet is incredibly important. We all need electricity, water, food, shelter, clean air. We all need these things, but we have to give something back. We can't just keep taking that. And I think that having a varied career, I suppose, across the construction sector and the built environment, which, you know, there are so many careers in the built environment, there are lots of things that you can do to make a real difference. And I think that having a varied career, or having an outlook that says, what can I do? What can I do as a person that my passion will drive what I need to do? And I think, talking to all the young people today, have a think about what it is you would like to contribute to the world in the future. We have a responsibility. At my age, I have a responsibility, absolutely, to help all the young people that are listening today, and everyone that's listening today. I have to do something. I can't carry on in this world without giving something back, because I've been from a generation that has, put some of that problem onto the youngsters today. I've been part of that. You know, my father was a coal miner. I grew up in a coal mining village. So I have played my part in that world. And I believe that it's my responsibility now to give something back for the world that I lived in the past. So if, like me, you're concerned about the environment and you need to do something, study the science, study the environmental science. It's absolutely fascinating. You know, I studied the economics of climate change. It's fascinating. Study the fact that the world needs a certain element of resources to keep going. look at what those resources might be. My job now is getting more and more involved in what we call battery storage. So Tesla have invented this battery storage system. My job is actually looking at battery storage at the moment as well. So how can we go one step further and store all of that electricity that we're generating from our roofs in a little box that then we flick a switch at the end of the night. You know, when we get home from work, we flick a switch. We use the power from the box instead of the power from the grid, coming from the national grid. So how can we learn about all of these things that encourage us to be better in the built environment? And I don't know how I'm doing for time, but I'm going to just do a couple of more slides and then we'll go over to what the next speaker. You can find out about all of our work on our website. Obviously, you can get to me from Climate Action Northeast as well. Follow us on social media. But together, let's work together to build better stuff. We can all do it. We all have the resources. We all have the power. So let's do it.